Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
I would love to know more about why you love NiftyLit and why you are doing this. Like, what's your personal joy?
Oh my gosh. Would you like to hear from me or from Joe? Because Joe is the absolute wonderkind behind this entire project.
That I know. Joe is really amazing. I did meet Joe and got to hear a lot from
Oh, fantastic.
them, but I want to hear from you.
Okay, so I'll introduce myself. I'm Katie Ziegler. I am fortunate enough to be the editor-in-chief of NiftyLit and get to work with the remarkable Joe and Alex Burtness, who is not with us tonight. He had a brand new baby recently, so we'll forgive him for not being able to come tonight. I was lucky enough to be in an MFA program recently with Joe, during which she approached me with this miraculous idea and asked me to come aboard. And it's been an absolute joy and delight to do so. For me, I think something that Joe said in a very early conversation about Web3, because I'm not a technological maven whatsoever. I am more of the literary word nerd of the crew. But when Joe said to me that Web3 is all about being less of an influencer culture and more of a creator culture, that really struck me and struck a chord with me, that I think what I want to contribute to NiftyLit and what I want to contribute to Web3 is sort of equalizing the playing field of the publishing industry, making it more accessible, and really importantly, paying writers and artists for their work so that their value is not just in bylines, but their value is in the work that they're creating and the hours of thought and time and effort that they put into creating those. And I think one thing that Joe and I really agree on and that we've tried to cultivate is that this really is a community. This is a family of people who believe in the power of words and the power of writing and imagery, and that we can all lift each other up. There's no need to be competitive per se in this kind of market and industry. I think we're all made better when everyone is made better. And so this has been just an absolute delight and blessing for me to be able to participate in this, to work with Joe, to be able to bring together all of these wonderful people and all of their wonderful writing and lift it up for one another. So that's my sappy response to your question, and I really appreciate you asking it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. That was absolutely wonderful.
Thank you. So it looks like we are filling in quite a bit. And so I am going to begin just with our announcements and sort of how this evening is going to progress. And as people come in, they can catch up. I am Katie Ziegler, and you just heard me rant on and on about myself. So I'm going to let Joe introduce herself as our fearless founder and CEO and just all around fabulous person.
Oh, thank you, Katie. Thanks so much to everyone for being here. I caught a little bug, so if my screen goes dark, it's because I left to go blow my nose for a second or something. But I so appreciate you all coming, and you kind of never know, like when you start a project or a company or something, you never really know like what's going to blossom from it. And we've just been like really committed to putting writers and artists first. And I think it's just like, it's paying off so much because we're building something really incredible. I could go on, and many of you have had dialogue with me regarding the technology aspect of NiftyLit, which is an ever-changing landscape and forever challenging. And but we're getting better. I wish Alex was here because Alex has really been like doing an amazing job with some of our partner companies, making the technology more user-friendly. And in the meantime, we've continued to get amazing submissions and get amazing writers on board with publishing with us. So thank you all, and I'll let Katie take it away.
Thank you, Joe. And I just want to say hello to Linda, who is one of my students this semester. It's so nice to see you. You just made my heart grow 3 sizes bigger.
Yeah, I'm not.
Thank you, sir.
Fiction.
Thank you so much for being here.
The class is great. I love
Oh,
it.
thank you. So I just wanted to make a couple of announcements before we start, which is we currently have our reproductive rights issue available, which a majority of the proceeds of that particular anthology will go towards WRAP, which is the Women's Reproductive Rights Assistance Project. It's a wonderful, wonderful organization. So you can visit NiftyLit and look under anthologies and find our special reproductive rights issue. And then, drum roll please, we will be dropping our special 80s themed issue on Halloween. We'll be dropping each of the pieces around the hour mark, all leading up to spooky time on Halloween. So you have that to look forward to as well. We're going to get going with our event. If everyone could make sure that you are muted so that we don't get any reverb or sort of errant dogs barking like mine will probably do, that would be fantastic. I am so delighted to have these 6 writers here tonight with us who are indicative of fresh, new, amazing, innovative ways of putting words together and making something magic out of them. We have poetry, we have fiction, we have nonfiction, so we're going to cross all of the genres tonight. Our first is Chris Green. He's going to be reading his short story Perdition, which appeared in issue number 2 of NiftyLit. Chris lives in Florida with his wife, 2-year-old son, and new baby daughter. His first story was published in 2018 through Morpheus Tales. Last year, he had 3 short stories published, and this year he's had 4 short stories published, as well as 2 poems. So he's just doing amazingly in this literary world that we all love. I'd like to introduce you, Chris Green. Take it away. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you for letting me be here tonight. I really appreciate it. So this is a little bit from my short story Perdition, which kind of falls in line with Halloween and everything. So I hope you enjoy it. We walk up to the house. The Wilsons don't answer the door. She nods her head to the side, so I follow her around. The wooden fence is locked. After looking around, I find a small twig and push it through, popping open the latch. The grass is high in the backyard. We take small, cautious steps around the corner of the house. The Wilsons' dog lies next to the door. I look at Katerina. She looks at the fence and lowers her head. I know what she is thinking. The fence, to keep the dog from running away, kept it here to starve. Sagging fur stretches across visible ribs as flies buzz around its poor, unmoving body. I hesitate before knocking on the sliding glass door. I look down at the dog. Would there be views inside? Would the inside be covered with a blackness? Katerina gasps, shaking me out of these thoughts. When something goes missing, you don't notice right away until it pushes itself in your face. As we look through the sliding glass door, we see birds clinging to it, tapping on the window from the inside. Katerina and I look at each other. I look up at the sky and see nothing flying. When had the birds disappeared? But looking at them now, all crowded in this living room, I wondered how I had not noticed. The birds cling to the far walls like moths. Their pecking drowns out every thought. I don't want to open the door. I don't want to know what happened to the Wilsons. I want to crawl back into bed. I feel the exhaustion consume me as reality feels out of reach. In my head, I can hear my father pacing back and forth in the hallway, humming, or mumbling his one-syllable note. The note staggered with each heavy exhale, sounding like he's crying. I see him turn around, and I know I hate him. His hollow and empty eyes stare at me. I hate what he has become. He is weak and allowed this ooze, to take over. I hate the world, the birds refusing to steam, the dogs starving to death because the owners had succumbed to the darkness. I thought winter was coming early and the fall winds pushed them south, Katerina says. I had no idea. Tap, 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 one of the birds interrupts our conversation. How are they holding on to the glass? I close my eyes, but my mind lingers on my father's hollow, empty eyes, his empty expression, his open mouth, his humming and bobbing head like a character in a puppet show. A bird flies against the window with a thump. I shake my head back and forth as I step back. I don't want to be here. I don't want to see this. I feel the breath leave my lungs as I see Katerina's hand opening the sliding glass door. I tear my hand from hers and close it to a fist. She doesn't look at me. I I don't look at her. We stare at the birds. The bird who flew against the window hops, its head lopsided. If they're afraid, we should let them hide, she says. Are they afraid? I ask, thinking they might be infected as well as everything else in this whole world. Katerina seems more curious than afraid. Her hand reaches toward the glass before dropping to her side. The more I look in the living room, the more I see birds are covering the wall, perching on ceiling fans, some on the kitchen counter. The TV reflects their small movements. Before I can say anything, Katerina opens the door and rushes inside. Still holding my hand, she drags me in. I close the door behind me, holding my breath. The birds stay perched, staring at us. The smell of death fills the air. The room grows darker as the birds begin to line the glass door, blocking our escape. I kick a bird that approaches me, and rather than flying back, his body caves. The itch comes back to me. What is inside this bird? What is inside everything? I stomp on it like scratching an itch. I want to know and see the ooze come out. And when it does, it surprises me, rising up from the bird carcass like an accusatory finger before falling. We head toward the front door. The birds begin to follow in a frantic, almost blind pattern, bouncing off the walls and knocking over pictures. A trail of those who will not or cannot fly parade behind us. The house lets out a groan, causing me to stumble toward the wall. I see the birds staring at me. We turn into a bedroom and close the door. They start pecking at the door almost instantly. A few fluttering crashes against the door cause us both to jump. So.
Thank you so much, Chris. I'm so glad. That's actually my favorite section of the piece. So it was kismet that you chose it for this evening. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, to go from perdition to poetry, we have Amelia Diaz-Ettinger poems, The Organ as a Heart and Moments of Tranquility Among the Blazing Chaos appeared in issue number 2 of NiftyLit alongside Perdition. Amelia is a Latinx BIPOC poet and writer. Her published books include Learning to Love a Western Sky by Airlie Press, Speaking at a Time, Hablando a la Vez by Red Bat Press, and a chapbook, Fossils in a Red Flag by Finishing Line Press. A full poetry manuscript will be released this fall by Red Bat Press. She resides in Eastern Oregon, and I'm delighted to bring you Amelia Diaz-Ettinger.
Thank you. And I have to say thank you to NiftyLit. It has made us feel very valued and seen. And the artwork, I cried the first time I saw the artwork that was paired with the poems. It was so deadpan and beautiful. And I can't say enough of it because I loved it. I just absolutely loved it. So I'm gonna, thank you everybody that is here too. I'm gonna start with Moments of Tranquility. The 3 poems I'm gonna read are family poems, which is unusual for me, actually. Moments of Tranquility Among the Blazing Chaos. Of an ambulance that carries my daughter to the ICU. A manager takes the measure of her poisoned veins. The pity in the nurse's eyes as they enter and exit room 5. Blended now to cricket full sunrise when I knelt by the perfect row of peas, plucking weeds. My stained fingers working the soil's mercy, its grit, coolness, a slight measure of delight and hollow quiet for broken nails, away from the mutual tenderness we turn to bog and swamp water, the fear in her eyes. Still there is a piece of sunlight warming the yellow flowers on the tomato vines. The chickens lazy cluck as they scratch. Her dog relegated as my constant companion, his eyes appraising as I tend this crop and what we came to believe about each other. My garden apron full of seeds, the surprising satisfaction of those tiny black fruits, of those tiny black face, making sharp my hands' creases, a prospect that these will grow together, maybe even this coming season. There's always something about family that even in the midst of darkness, you can find joy in. And gardens tend to do that, don't they? This next piece, The Organ as a Heart, is written for my father. And there is a reference to Galen, which is Claudius Galenos, which was a Greek physician of 129 AD to 210 AD, and his view of the blood flow as a place of spirit. The organ as a heart. I want to see the depths of my father's heart, the confession of failed arteries, the atrophy of faith, from a life filled with the spoils of regret. My life has been a failure, he said. I know it's just a pump, no virtuous spirits there. Still, I struggle to hold on to Galen's view and pretend to know my father cared for me. In the caverns of those now empty chambers, I want to walk in his darkness, hold the softness of those holes to find its sentiments, as flawed as the man that carry it. But I want to finish on something light. So I talk about my daughter and I talked about my father. I want to finish with my grandson, one of them. A Douglas fir lesson. Every time they visit, we pilgrimage this homemade trail. The oldest asks, "Are we going to see your tree?" The youngest wants to find if he has one. As we walk, we stop to listen to the sounds of a stellar's crackle and the wren's song. The children don't know the names of birds, and I hope there is still time for that. They spot my tree before I do, but they don't dash. Instead, both stand as altar boys on the side of the path that leads to this caved Douglas fir. The boys wait for me as I share my confidences with her old bark. My cheek softens at her touch. My arms extend around her girth. Why do you love this tree so much? A good question that requires an answer. We look at the base of the tree filled with seed scattering of squirrels and her hollow middle where she holds the web of an orb weaver. To the kids' delight, and we look up, this tree is full of gnarly epicomic branches. The oldest child takes my hand to compare. It is not the prettiest tree or the oldest or the biggest. No, I agree, but it's my youngest that surprises me. I know why, Nana. Look, the branches on the very top still have green. The tree is just like you. Thank you, guys.
Oh, Amelia, thank you so much. And thank you for such a lovely reading of your poems. And I loved hearing your the newest. Oh, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. Oh, I'm loving every minute of this. Okay, so next up, we have Lizette Roman Johnston, whose nonfiction essay, I Want to Be a Skater Girl, was featured in issue 2 of NiftyLit. Lizette is a Northeastern native living in the San Francisco Bay Area. When she's not writing creative nonfiction and satire, She's making TikToks, producing original music, and designing merch. A multi-talented, ADHD-ridden artist, Lizette likes to call herself a no-niche Nelly. Follow her on Twitter at ZetterCakes, Instagram, and TikTok at Rizbot. I give you the inimitable Lizette Roman Johnston.
Thank you so much, Katie. And shout out to my mom who is here, my mother named Stay at Home in Wilton. I'm gonna read, I want to be a skater girl. Cool. I have a customized skateboard. It's pink on the underside and topped with grip tape in the shape of a Roman numeral 3, also pink. It has a pointed tip, leading the way as I shred through the streets of Berkeley, my sick, nasty shadow passing through the glow of each streetlight lining the small porched houses off Shattuck Ave. The nighttime USPS workers can't help but watch as I roll by in my white Vans and vintage denim jacket, adorned with pins and patches from all over the country, along with a big Z stitched on the back. Again, pink. The late night walkers, their kids, and their dogs all nearly shit themselves watching me weave between menacing street pebbles by shifting my weight back and forth from toe to heel. In other words, I am a god. That being said, I am not good at skateboarding. Recently, my boyfriend Robert asked if I ever skateboarded. I told him that I own a skateboard back at my parents' house in Connecticut. It was a gift from my college boyfriend who fancied himself a skilled craftsman, which he was, considering he built me a skateboard and also made the Z patch on the back of my denim jacket, the pink one. But the source of these aesthetic defining pieces no longer matters. They are mine now. They are, according to my friends, so Lizette. I don't remember using my skateboard much since college, though I'd keep it in the back of my car in case I needed any cool points. One of the times I did ride it was for a music video I made, in which I played the role of a liberal arts fuckboy. I shot the video while visiting my college campus months after graduating. The parking lot outside the dorms was flat enough for me to roll with enough stability, and my video editing managed to disguise any dweeby wobbling. Robert has seen this video and referenced it when he asked if I skated. "You look like you knew what you were doing," he said. Cha-ching, I thought, fooled him. His next words made my eyes twinkle. "You seem like someone who'd skateboard. It fits your aesthetic." Oh, hell yeah. Within minutes, I texted my mom asking if she'd be able to ship my skateboard to California. She replied within minutes saying she could ship it out the upcoming Friday. I put my phone on the coffee table and told Robert, I have decided to be really good at skateboarding. In the week waiting for the package to arrive, I did a lot of skating-related Googling. Adult large pink skateboarding helmet. Backpack that holds skateboard. Skateboarding tether so it doesn't roll away when I jump off. Before I decided I would adopt skateboarding as my new personality, I had been shopping on Facebook Market for a bike and even drove to West Oakland to test ride a pastel blue bike that would have taken my aesthetic game to new heights. Seconds after straddling the tall seat, I teetered in a very uncool manner, nearly falling to the cracked asphalt in front of the seller and everyone else in their neighborhood. Because I never knew how far away the handlebars were on a city bike. Because of how adorable the bike looked, how much pastel blue complements my signature pink, I am very proud of myself for driving home without it. I've never really seen myself as a bike person anyway. Soon, I really didn't mind being bikeless because I had a cooler form of transportation on the way. I'd still have to run tedious errands like go to the post office or the pharmacy, but how much cooler would I look waiting in line for my antidepressants with a dope-ass skateboard at my feet? I'd soon be rolling past all the suckers on foot, all the stray cats who'd watch in awe and go, meow-wee, that's one cool girl. Hopefully they wouldn't think I was a complete square for all the padding I'd be wearing. But I was set on buying cool looking pads from Zoomies or does Vans sell padding? Wherever the real skaters go to party. Instead of doing grad school homework one afternoon, I used my time to shop online. Turns out the nearest Zoomies has curbside pickup. I checked the time and decided that I could make the trip before my evening class on Zoom. But when I browsed, nothing I saw was so Lizette. Nothing was worth driving 10 minutes to interact with strangers who knew everything about skating and might have made fun of me for whatever ignorance, whatever uncoolness I let seep through. So I ended up buying nothing. Instead, I daydreamed. I am in pursuit of the park, skateboarding, either on the sidewalk or in the bike lane. I don't know the rules yet. For daydreaming's sake, let's just say I'm on the sidewalk. I expertly weave through pedestrians, dodging even the most unpredictable of children and chihuahuas. They all wish they were me, including the dogs, who now imagine themselves rolling down Bone Street wearing a bandana that reads Supreme. The early evening glow surrounds my silhouette like a halo, and the flash of denim and pink grows smaller and smaller as I leave them in the dust, and they watch me use my big long legs to pump my way into the sunset. It was 7 p.m. on a Thursday night when I opened the front door to see a long box. When I saw my name and address written in my mom's weird loopy handwriting, sorry, I love you, I gasped and ducked my head back inside. My skateboard is here, I told Robert. My mom said it would come Friday, but here it was, like Christmas coming early. I dragged the box inside, allowing it to take up nearly all the walking space in our tiny one-bedroom apartment. Robert smiled at my excitement. You're so juiced, I love it, and went to grab the scissors. Before he could find them, I started digging my nails beneath the packing tape and tearing it off, the monster method, I call it. And once I stood over the open box, red-faced and panting, I saw it, my ticket to Cool Town. My grad school friend Nick and I play tennis at a local park every now and then. And soon after I got my skateboard, we made plans to test it out on the blacktop next to the courts. Nick watched as I Velcroed all my pads on, the ones I had settled on because a Walmart Instacart order meant I didn't have to interact with real skaters, nor did I have to wait more than an hour for a package to arrive. Nick and I laughed because I looked like one of the little kids gearing up to ride their rainbow tasseled bicycles and plastic roller skates. I didn't feel particularly cool, but I settled for silly. It was all part of the process. The late autumn sun was setting and the LED lights had flickered on like spotlights looking down on me and my board. So, I said to Nick, if at any point I look cool and competent, feel free to take a picture of me. He nodded, knowing what this meant to me. Oh yeah, I got you. I bent over to reposition the board, setting myself up with the least precarious launching angle. I stood back upright, squinted at the board, then crouched down to adjust the tip once more. I said okay a bunch of times and nodded while Nick said, you got this. Soon I was ready to place my left foot on the deck and take a deep breath. I bent my knees slightly, planted my right foot on the asphalt, and pushed off. And it went fine. No good pictures though. Since my skateboard arrived in California, I have only taken one selfie with it. Or I took maybe 10 selfies, but only posted one on social media. I took them on my street next to my candy red Jeep Liberty. I was wearing one of my dad's old Hawaiian shirts he had shipped to me per my request. I had on white clout sunglasses, very Harry Styles circa 2018, with my blonde hair in a low bun under the brim of my backwards camo baseball cap. Until I realized how lame it would look in a selfie, I was wearing my helmet because, yes, I had actually been skating. My intention had been to skate to the convenience store to pick up a Red Bull and a pack of American Spirits, but after failing to roll myself up the 5-degree incline, I resorted to walking while holding my skateboard, entering the convenience store with a too small Walmart helmet sort of perched atop my head. On my way back, though, gravity helped me roll a few blocks down my street. I probably looked pathetic jumping off my board at every stop sign, but I earned that selfie. My next trip to the convenience store was the day I dyed my hair pink. I considered bringing my skateboard then, but decided to leave it in my car. One set of wheels on the passenger seat, the other on the floor, among cigarette butts, expired CVS coupons, and broken aux cords. I felt the skateboarding fire dwindling down before I got good at it, before it truly became part of my aesthetic. Kind of like when I was 18 and wanted to know everything about astrology and dreamt about getting a tattoo of a crab on one shoulder and a lion on the other because I had just learned I was a Cancer Leo cusp. Or like when people told me I should model because I'm tall. And for 3 months, my entire Tumblr consisted of photos of runway models wearing Balmain, Valentino, Fendi, designers I don't like now and probably didn't like then either. When I walked to the convenience store with pink hair and no skateboard, I tried to smother the voice in my head that told me I'd never ride my skateboard again, that I was just doing that thing I do, that some neurodivergent people do, fixating on new hobbies, searching for an identity, piecing one together based on what others say. I entered the convenience store and texted Nick, "It's fine that I am without skateboard. I have cool hair now." Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lizette. Oh my gosh, I've read that probably 20 times and there's nothing like having you read it. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Thanks,
thank you, thank
everyone.
you. Next up, we have Merrick Kulik, whose poem Thing or Two was featured in issue number 3 of NiftyLit. Merrick immigrated to the USA from Poland in 1992. A former high school English teacher, he currently works for a molecular diagnostics laboratory. His poems were published or are about to be published in Plants and Poetry, Rat's Ass Review, Snakeskin, Orchard's Poetry Journal, Change 7, Journal of New Jersey Poets, Shot Glass Journal, and Fish Publishing. I'm so excited to have Merrick here tonight with us, and I give you Merrick Kulig.
Thanks, Katie, and thanks to Joe and Alex as well. And I want to give a shout out to my friend Chris, who introduced me to NiftyLit. Can you hear me all right? Okay. So I'm just going to read it right off the NiftyLit website. Thing or Two. Pretty soon, we'll be telling Bird when to get the early worm, showing voles where to hollow the earth, how boring holes into tunnels is superfluous. High time, too, that monarchs are remonstrated for their geometry non-conforming flight patterns. And the garden tulip, deserving every of admonishing sweetness, call it incorrigible for not involving to retract down its shooty cocoon to avoid the salad bar chomp of the occasionally trespassing deer or bunny. Speaking of, will the hopping and the hooved ever learn that lot line permeability is a privilege of the flying and the subterranean? Surely it's up to us to post such directives. That asterisk, may it be known, is for the songless flyers, those sans chirp, trill, or whistle. Buzzing and whining, you can't tell them nothing. Let us voice our displeasure then with swat, slap, and the serpent silence of aerosol. That'll teach them a thing or two. Don't even get me started on the needling inequity of the no-see-ums, or the brunette strand of together working sugar ants T-boning the threshold and the back door. Bearing in mind this fledgling litany is a beginning born from the limited scope of doing yard chores. And then I'll just read one more short one. Katie, I think you're familiar with this one too. It's called Narcissus. It's a really short one, and it was picked up by the New Jersey or the Journal of New Jersey Poets. So Narcissus. To be the sky over the Aegean, the Pacific, eerie, the dead, by day blushing blue, then come night, tall, dark, and handsome, across the universe, striking matches to light your own cigarette. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Merrick. I'm so glad you read the second poem. It's just fantastic. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We really appreciate it. Next up, we have A.M. Larks, whose short story Sick Day was featured in issue #1 of NiftyLit. A.M. Larks writes fiction, nonfiction, children's literature, and drama. Her writing has appeared in NiftyLit, Scoundrel Time, Essay, a Journal of Nonfiction Studies, 5 on the 5th, Charge Magazine, and the Ziziva and Plowshares blogs. She has performed her stories at Lit Up, a town hall theater in Lafayette, California, and is the current assistant managing editor and blog editor, as well as former photography editor at Kelp Journal, a multimedia literary review, and the former fiction editor at Please See Me Lit Magazine, as well as the former blog editor of the Coachella Review. A.M. earned a Bachelor of Arts in English Literature, a JD, and most recently an MFA in Creative Writing and Writing for the Performing Arts from UC Riverside's Palm Desert's Low Residency Program. She is a longtime patron of the arts and enjoys stories that capture the complexities of life on the page or screen. I'm delighted to have A.M. with us here tonight, and I give you A.M. Larks.
Well, thank you for that lovely introduction. So here's Sick Day. Chang leans over my right thigh, shaving the baby hairs from the elastic band of my panties down to the middle of my quadriceps. In private school, that was the highest the hem of my skirt could go, the bottom of my fingertips. I'd wished I had shorter arms. I could have had shorter skirts, garnered more male attention. Unfortunately, I was appropriately proportioned. My skirts would go no higher than an inch above my knee. I haven't worn a skirt in years. I didn't think about male attention until now. The morning Marcus left, I went to La Buja on my own. Nobody asked about Marcus, but they knew. People treated me gingerly. They kept insisting that I not work so hard, that I take some rest. When Ray, my boss, said that I was due for a break and sent me home early, I knew that Marcus had called and told them he quit. He was going home to terra firma. The orientation for the International Med Corps includes the pessimistic fact that there is an expiration date for people in disaster work. Everyone spirals out eventually. I feel the pulling of the cheap plastic razor against my damp skin as Chang glides the white and yellow instrument down my thigh one more time. There needs to be no hair or the design won't lay properly. He glides deodorant, men's speed stick, over the area. I know that ice blue color. I know that smell. Eucalyptus and sage. Marcus. Even here, in a tattoo parlor in Singapore, I can't get away from him. The tracing paper crinkles as Chang presses it onto my skin. It's a Vanda Miss Joaquim, an orchid with large, broad, violet rose-colored lips that feed into a fiery orange mouth. In high school, there was a Revlon lipstick shade that we were all dying to be allowed to wear, Hot Lips, a magenta pink shade just verging on scandalous red. I remember the morning Marcus left, I was Hot Lips everywhere, burned by a stubble across my breastbone and down my clavicle. He'd marked my body, and I'd marked his. The indentations of my teeth were still in his shoulder, and there were light claw marks near his groin. When we turned on the news, the footage of the quake was everywhere. A 7.3. It struck near one of the small port towns on the Bacan Island. We knew there was going to be damage, fatalities, chaos. We'd seen it before. Marcus clicked off the devastation, making the TV a black vacant square. I can't go to another one. I can't work another one. I just can't. He was hunched over in defeat. I'd already put my daisy scrub shirt on. Singapore's national flower, the Vanda, has a vibrant, almost hidden, sunny yellow core. I stare at it while Chang works. I like that he is quiet, efficient, methodical. He is an artist and precise in his choices. We all make our choices. I take a moment to look down and see what he has drawn on me. There are 6 buds on 2 clusters, not one is facing out. This gives the illusion of depth. But to see the Vanda, I've moved my body, Chang's canvas, and he sits frozen with permanent marker in hand, waiting for me to return to an anesthetized-like state. I lie back and look away. My cheeks flush. He caught me looking when I said I didn't care. I feel the tip of the marker press into my skin, making quick vertical strokes, and then some light hash marks. It's wet, like tears or sweat. I remember wet. The day Marcus left, it was 92 degrees, hot for an Indonesian summer, and it rained 4.7 inches. The North Maluku earthquake had just shaken the island like a coconut tree, and he was there, and then he wasn't. I can't remember the exact moment. I can't remember if I cried. I remember other people crying. I remember rounding and rounding and rounding, being patient after patient after patient, crying, scared, bleeding, bruised. When working a disaster, narrow your focus to the patient, the person in front of you, the handbook advises doctors. Treat and move on. Treat and move on. Time stretches and shrinks that way. Hours pass in the blink of an eye. Chang catches me looking again. He must sense the concern I have about the large number of hash marks he's added to the background. From here, it looks like a large black box. Coffin. This isn't what I pictured. You need contrast, he says, gesturing to the unmarked area and my overall lack of pigment. I lie back down. I hear the buzzing of the gun begin. He's testing it out, adjusting the speed of the needle, and then he'll dip the needle into a pool of black ink smaller than my pinky nail, rest his hand on my thigh, and then press the needle into my skin. I expect it to hurt. Marcus had threatened to leave many times, and eventually it was going to happen. He wanted solid ground, but I was going to where the earthquakes were. He couldn't be in a constant state of fluctuation anymore. Certainty was critical. When we argued, it was always the same. There's always going to be another earthquake, Gina. This is fucking Indonesia, he would say. And I would shrug. We'd go to bed. We'd make out, his beard stubble burning my chin as it rubbed me raw. In the morning, it would be the color of Rainier cherries. He told me they called it a pash rash back home. Something to be proud of because it was the mark of the love. Those Aussies have a language of all their own. I should be embarrassed by my body and its condition. I see that there are saddlebags forming in the vicinity of Vonda. Masses of cellulite bubble up under the skin as Chang leans on my naked thigh. I used to work out every Tuesday and Thursday when I lived in the States. Here, though, it's hard to have a schedule when you're jumping from place to place whenever the phone rings or the ground shakes. When Chang asked where I wanted the piece and I dropped my pants to show him, it was then that I remembered my body. I hadn't shaved anything in my southern or northern hemisphere in months. Now there was a new man, crotch level, and I didn't know what kind of underwear I had on. The utility were the pretty kind. Chang was professional. He didn't balk at my condition. He was steady and calm, like he is now, his whole body leaning over my exposed flesh, every scar and hair visible. He doesn't notice what's on the surface. He's focused on implanting something deeper down. It relaxes me that he's so engrossed in his job. I understand that tunnel vision. He's not looking at what is there, but what will be there. Craning my neck, I see that he's finished the outline of each delicate petal. It's odd, childlike almost. Hard to differentiate one form from another without color. I hope this wasn't a mistake. I never thought it was a mistake to follow the quake. The first time was the day after Christmas 2004. I still remember 15 years later when the short news blip talked about mass fatalities after a 9.3 earthquake near Sumatra and the resulting tsunami wave. My mom was in the kitchen heating up leftovers, planning the New Year's Eve menu. My dad was fussing with the logs in the fire. My brothers, home from college, were flipping the TV on to catch the Patriots versus the Jets. And that's when we saw the 15-second coverage. We should donate blood, Ryan said. Maybe tomorrow, Chris replied, holding up a beer as proof of his ineligibility. Such a shame, my dad said, sitting back in his chair. What time is kickoff? Weren't the Parkers going to Indonesia, Ted? My mom asked, pulling the gravy boat out of the microwave using the crocheted pot holders Aunt Sally made. Phuket, does that sound right? That's Thailand, Mom, I corrected her. Well, waves travel far, Gina, she replied. Chang is going over and over the punctured areas of my skin with his gun and wiping the droplets of blood away as they appear. It didn't hurt at first, but it does now, in the middle, as he adds layer upon layer of pigment, deepening the color, getting under the next layer of skin. Each injection is a pinprick of pain, short and electric. The paper towel, sandpaper. I'm usually the one in control, the one working, the one in charge of someone else's life, their body and appearance. But here at Singapore Electric, Chang is in charge of my body, my appearance, my life. His brows are deeply furrowed, concentrating on applying the varying shades of magenta. My skin has been rubbed raw by the repetitive movement. I wonder if my thigh is the color of hot lit. I assume it is. I wonder how Chang can tell the difference between the color he's injecting and the color I've become. I met a tattooed we women in the summer of 2007 after our granddaughter helped escape the tsunami waves from a series of earthquakes that hit near the island. She had blue dots running up her hyoid bone, dashes that encircled her radius and ulna at the wrist joint, and vertical lines that exploded from a ball at the center of her hand that ran with her arteries. She was one of the last remaining fully tattooed people from her culture. She grabbed my left hand and examined the black marks just below my index finger joint, left by my lifelong habit of impatient pen tapping. When she rubbed them, they faded, but remained slightly visible. She covered my hand with hers and tapped it twice. She met Marcus too. I think she liked him better because she kept rubbing the black and gray eucalyptus leaves tattooed on the posterior of his biceps. When they didn't fade, she smiled despite the agony of her cracked ribs. I knew the acute pain would recede when the area went numb. I just didn't realize how long that would take. Cheng had to stop when I began shaking. He was filling the stems with a lime green hue. The canvas shouldn't move. I was grateful he didn't say anything. The new addition on my leg, like a growth, is attention-grabbing, vibrant, and prominent. The thick black lines are ribbed with an imperceptible white one. I thought white wasn't going to show up on me. I thought it wasn't going to have an impact, but the contrast gives the green a lushness that it didn't have in the jar. We aren't done yet, though. There still is the background. Cheng sits and motions he's ready to begin again. I feel his hand lightly tracing the hash marks. The vibration of the gun is more violent than the pressure on my skin. Yesterday, just before Ray forced me out the door, he made sure to tell me that Australia is nice this time of year. And I'm sure that when I called in sick today, that's where he thought I went. Everyone expected me to chase after Marcus. Everybody wants us to be together. We are something concrete and predictable. At the beginning, Marcus and I looked like a probability. It was likely we would last. But we both wanted variability, not volatility. We both appreciated the thrill of the unknown and loved the challenge of rapidity. But somewhere along the way, our relationship suffered structural alteration caused by a growth, Marcus's growth. He no longer found the dynamism of sporadic but consistent call to arms romantic. He no longer was attracted to the quick fix or fixing quickly. There's only one solution for a growth, removal. He made the incision, but I'm responsible for sending the specimen to pathology and suturing and dressing the wound. When Cheng finishes, he's sweating and wipes the side of his face with the hem of his shirt. He covers Vonda with a sheet of cling wrap and tapes it into place. She can't be shown until she's ready. He suspiciously eyes my pants as I pull them back on, and then nods approval. They're hospital scrubs, baggy and loose. They will not constrict or suffocate Vonda. As I hand over my credit card and hit an unexpected wave of sadness. Cheng must see it on my face. Orchids are my favorite to tattoo on women, he says. He was the one to recommend Vonda to me. I'd been considering lilies or maybe even a carnation, but he was insistent. An orchid. This orchid. Many are beautiful, some are delicate, but they are all resilient, he continues while shuffling the papers on the countertop. Orchids defy expectation. I smile wide. That they do. On my way out the door, I call Ray and see if they need any help. If I hurry, maybe I can make that evening shift. I crinkle as I walk, and there's a tightness around the damaged skin, but I feel a buzz of adrenaline. Ray was surprised and reluctant, but he said they could always use the help. Just get here when I can.
Thank you so much, AM. I loved hearing that again. Thank you so much for being here tonight and sharing your work with us. All right, our final reader of the evening is Paul G. Heller, whose short story, The Buddha, was not only included in issue #1 of NiftyLit, but was the first literary NFT in history. Dun, 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 dun. Paul G. Heller is an award-winning narrative fiction author and playwright based in the San Francisco Bay Area, where his schooling inspired the Buddha. Since receiving his MFA, he's been publishing fiction and nonfiction in journals and periodicals, while his plays have been produced in many venues. In 1984, he was a fellow with the National Endowment for the Humanities at Oxford, Mississippi. His work has been documented by Lisa Renaud in Critical Stages and on Howl Round. He has received grants from Theater Bay Area, California Center for Cultural Innovation, the Wattis Foundation, and the Zellerbach Foundation. His theater work, often in collaboration with actors, puppeteers, dancers, and field experts, examines America's shrinking rural culture, prison debt, our current political divide, our identity as Americans, and our relationship with Mexico, Japan, China, and Vietnam. Tonight, Paul will be reading from a new work, The Wolf Who Cried Boy. I'm so delighted to have Paul here. Take it away, Paul G. Heller.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Katie. Thank you very much. And Joe and everyone. I loved all your work. Thank you for sharing. The Wolf Who Cried Boy. This is an excerpt from the first part of a longer narrative. Like many in his high school, Corey loved luxury sports cars. There was no future in which he imagined himself without one, no matter the cost. In fact, their out-of-reach quality made them all the more desirable. After a year vacillating between Alfa Romeos, Porsches, and Ferraris, he finally announced his choice, the Lamborghini Huracan EVO Spider. This news he was quick to share with other guys he drove with at lunch to pick up cartons of fried chicken or ribs, which they devoured as they sped back to school. Other guys who had already settled on their Suzuki Cappuccinos, Jaguar XKEs, and Peugeots. Other guys who had spent many lunchtimes discussing the torque, turning radii, and aerodynamic pertinent to their chosen auto. Other guys happy now that their companion had at last settled on his favorite. For his part, after announcing his choice, Corey felt completely relaxed, as if a great weight had been lifted. As the boys drove up and down the hills of the small suburb, he imagined he was behind the wheel of the Huracan, the handle of the gear shift vibrating softly against his palm. However, starting in the fall of his senior year, Corey began to suffer 3 years of misfortune. Hadn't he always put maximum effort into everything he went out for? Basketball, calculus, advanced sciences, even and especially getting a job at the pet food store where he took the undesirable shifts, all in order to have a paycheck which, coupled with the funds his parents promised for Christmas, would cover the cost of a used car. But now, no matter what he did, nothing he tried could succeed. It was a physical impossibility, like running on water. He had to drop physics and was put into earth sciences, a class for students probably not going to four-year colleges. He no longer came to basketball practice or robotics club, though on paper he was still enrolled in them. And about college, his first choice, the one that he had selected after many elimination rounds and pronounced the gold standard, the one that no matter how viciously his friends taunted him, he had kept secret in case they too applied and diluted his chances, the one that his parents had promised to find the money to send him to, plus plane fare, plus incidentals such as new skis and boots, and above all, the one that provided internships at Boeing and Mercedes-Benz in their engine design departments. This college was now a non-starter. It would be offering his spot to someone else, someone with more luck. He had no idea how it all began. When you look at a tree and realize that all its leaves are gone, it was like that. It's not that he had never been unlucky. There'd been the usual stuff. As a freshman, he had asked this one girl to go out with him, but he made the tactical error of following up a text he had sent her that she had ignored by asking her in person in front of friends, which made her shy and have to straight up ice him, detonating a cacophony of eye rolling and tweeting. He walked away from her as if he had a higher purpose and none of this mattered. But he had lost all his dignity for 2 days. Then last year, both dogs died in the same week, mutts that had slept on his bed. Every night for weeks afterwards, he reached out his hand to stroke them as he was falling asleep and was surprised all over when he couldn't feel their fur and the sound of their breathing. Their memory would flush up at the worst time, like in the middle of US history. He didn't know he could get this upset or care. It was kind of inconvenient to lock himself in his room and turn up his music time after time. But the coup de grace, the coup de fucking caca, was basketball. Corey was a natural defensive basketball player. He was fast and fearless against opponents a foot taller than him. However, Corey constitutionally hated to give up points. Of course, he knew it was inevitable, a life truth. In fact, as his dad explained to him, that the other team would infiltrate his defense and score, and the best a person could do was to be prepared. Shit, what a platitude. It was for this reason that in the offseason, it had been Corey's practice to work out at the city basketball courts late in the day, when he could be counted on to be empty. He would warm up with sprints and then begin dribbling and pivoting combinations against an imagined team. He eased into a block and pivot combination drills. He practiced until the thing he could count on began to take hold. His focus on the specifics of each move faded, and his thoughts untangled themselves until his dad's advice meant nothing. These practices constituted the closest he came to a pure sense of freedom. After another 10 minutes, it was time to practice shooting. He had some pretty solid skills. 9 out of 10 times he could count on his 2-pointer layups. He could even make several 3-pointers in a row from mid-court. These were nothing to count on in the final seconds during the press of a close game, but in their own way, they were quietly rewarding. His rule was that he had to shoot 5 3-pointers in a row at the end of his practice before he could walk home. That night, after an hour of practice, he stood center court, sweating, gently dribbling the ball. He dropped into a crouch, then sprang up, rolling the ball onto the tips of his fingers and launched it into the basket. It went in silently. He made 3 more careful shots before a carload of guys he didn't know, pulled up. "One more," he said to them, "and then you got the court." They stepped around him, tripping him down. They yanked the ball away, and they drove off. When he stood up, he was shaking. As he walked home, he hoped no one he knew would stop to ask what was wrong. The flow of thought had abandoned him, and he would have been tongue-tied. It was hours before he could fall asleep that night. Why hadn't he chased them? Even if they kicked his ass, it would be better than this. They give him a few bruises, yes, but eventually these would fade. Whereas this constant rehashing the moment, this misery cluster had become a part of him and wasn't leaving anytime soon. They'd taken his ball and his ability to do anything about it. Why was this worse than the dogs? He knew the best thing to do was to ignore these revolving thoughts and move on. But by the time his alarm went off, he was still wide awake, the thoughts just as vivid and grown in nagging power. Worse, he was now unprepared for a pre-calculus test. He hated setbacks, such a waste of time. At the end of class, he asked the teacher if he could retake the test, but there was no good reason that he could actually give. "I got my ball stolen?" How did that explain why he hadn't memorized essential formulas? For all these unlucky moments, Corey could name their cause: a girl who didn't know something good when she looked at him, the fact that animals die, the assholes with no fucking sense of property. But this academic failure, there was no visible cause that had made him unlucky, nothing to settle his mind on, nothing to understand. He had done nothing to deserve his misfortune. The best that could be said of a tree without leaves is that now he had a clear view of the blue morning light. At Christmas, as promised, his parents gave him money, which, coupled with that, what he'd saved from the pet food shop, got him a pockmarked Honda sedan with a transmission that slipped and 160,000 miles on it. It needed constant oil infusions and showed obvious distress when pushed over 50. So he wasn't going anywhere for a while. His parents dutifully stood side by side on the doorstep as he drove it home. They looked like the old photographs they still kept in albums. He parked the Honda and went inside. So the universe, or whatever, had fulfilled the first of his dreams. The car was done. Up in his room, he enrolled in community college for the fall. No reason you couldn't limp along beside the car with that dream. It was funny. He'd taken all those hard classes just to avoid ending up here. He signed up for basic engineering classes and some upper level math, but one look at the text told him he'd already done a lot of the work before. You can't always get what you want, his father said. Since Christmas, his father had been offering him more and more of these kinds of bromides. Just stay in the slow lane. Nothing wrong with the slow lane for a while, champ. Jesus, speaking of nothing, did the man have nothing of value to pass on? Corey wanted some place that would keep him from wandering into more dead ends. When the fall finally rolled around, as predicted, the classes were easy, so he asked for more hours at the pet food store. They gave him vague answers for a couple of weeks, half promising this and that. Screw it, he thought. Having terrible luck didn't mean he had to take whatever someone handed him. He answered an ad for a fast food restaurant, seeking passionate candidates for retail and management roles, it read. He told himself to work on his passion and face the owner with a kind of jagged, what can I do for you attitude. The owner was a friendly man. When he interviewed Corey, he hardly asked him questions. Instead, he regaled him with stories of his own upbringing. Corey listened quietly. The man was ridiculous, but he couldn't ignore his passion. After a few preliminaries, the job was his. When it came to the topic of setting the alarm, however, the owner hemmed and hawed. Corey was surprised that this adult was uncertain to say something about his own establishment. Surely, at his age, he should be in command of his feeling. When the man finally got around to it, this is what he confided. I don't do this with every new hire, he said. But you're going to be the night manager, and that carries with it certain extra responsibilities. Corey looked at the man. Was he almost sweating? Did he somehow realize how Corey suffered from bad luck and was going to revoke the job offer? But the man merely said, I want to warn you about animals that might wander into the establishment. The last thing you want is for one to remain inside after all the customers are gone. Imagine how that would be. So use your eyes and ears. Corey nodded. What kind of animals? He asked. The owner seemed to be considering things carefully. In your case, he said, I'd be wary of foxes and stray dogs, things low to the ground and very fast. I'll also warn you that there have been bobcat sightings of late and coyotes. Also, mountain lions have been known to come this far out of the hills due to the drought. It was true. The paper had a picture of a big cat taken in the early morning light. Oh, and wolves too, he added. I really don't want to come back in the morning and find a wolf prowling around. I used to have a problem with them, but not lately. No wolves, Corey promised. Thank you very much.
Paul, thank you so much. I love hearing something new from you. What a treat and delight for all of us. I do want to open up. First, I want to thank everyone for reading, for being here, for sharing your words and your ideas and your magic with all of us. We do have a few minutes for questions. If anyone had any questions for any of our readers or about NiftyLit or anything at all, feel free to just unmute yourself and ask a question if you have one. No pressure, but if you do have a question, please feel free. Again, this is one of those things where I'm going to start talking and filling up the space. I guess I have a question for all of our readers tonight, if that's okay. And you don't all have to answer, but if you would like to answer, please do. What is something right now in your life that is seeming to be fertile ground for future writing? Is there something that's percolating in your brain right now that you're interested in working on or investigating in your own work?
Yes.
Yay.
it's still kind of a sensitive subject, but it has to do with just constantly being like in a gray area with like a weird amount, like a weirdly large amount of areas in my life. Yeah.
And do you think that will come out as nonfiction, as music, as, because you're so talented in so many different ways?
Well, who's to say? Definite, probably nonfiction, or like a Twitter thread. Hopefully nonfiction. Yeah.
Thank
Maybe
you so
so.
much, Lizette.
Thank you.
I think pretty much anything that's making me uncomfortable
Oh, interesting.
is driving me to try and indulge into that. And so I found lately, especially the last 6 months, as my writing's been developing, because I get up early and write every day, and I'm seeing that things that are difficult, I'm heading towards more. And like I wrote a nonfiction essay about a month ago, and I haven't really written a lot of nonfiction, and I called it happiness. And so now I'm getting all these rejection letters saying, thank you for sending happiness. And I was like, well, that I know that's rejection, but gravitating towards what's difficult and what's challenging, because ultimately it's making me better.
Oh, I love that, Chris. Is that something new? Is this something, a new development in your writing where discomfort is proving to be fertile for you, or has it always been something you've wanted to investigate?
At the risk of making a joke, I've always been a little uncomfortable. But I think it's lately it's I started seeing I'm gonna get better by things that are challenging or difficult. And so I found that like going to the gym feels horrible, but you go and your body feels horrible. And well, some people say that they feel great. That's never me. But you keep going because ultimately you're building muscles and you're getting better and getting stronger. So you just keep going because it's good for you. And so I'm just gravitating towards that because even though it doesn't feel good, it is good for me.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Chris.
So we moved to Oakland recently, and wherein my husband became a building manager. And when I was in my MFA, I was really interested in the short story cycle. And one of the things that you can do with the short story cycle is base it in place. Like, so if you think like Dubliners, Winesburg, Ohio is kind of like that. Several of the ones from Faulkner, right, are all based in a place about a town. And I just thought it was really interesting how many stories. It's a smaller apartment building. There's only 30 units or something, but how many stories, and that we're all connected here, and we all interact, but it's kind of almost like a passing interaction because we all have our own stories once the door closes as well. So I find that interesting, and a way to get around it. I think that might be something that eventually comes in the future, but like a collection or a cycle or something like that, just all based in place.
I love that, AM. And I think it's so interesting because I feel like place and setting and location is so strong in Sick Day that it's really sort of an extra character, all of these places that this woman has lived and places that she's served. So I would love to see that collection when it's ready. Anyone else? Oh, Joe, go for it.
I just wanted to jump in because I think some folks are dropping off as it gets later, but I just wanted to say before we totally shut it down, to a big thank you to Katie for making this happen and for everything too. I think the most compliments I get about NiftyLit are all things that Katie does. So I'm so happy that Katie and I came together, and with Alex as well, and some of the other folks on our small team. But I just wanted to put that out there and say thank you. And thank you to those of you who came to this. Mike, I see you out there. Mike has been like one of NiftyLit's biggest fans, and we just really appreciate all of the support.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you to everyone for coming tonight, for reading, for listening, for supporting. Thank you for being a part of NiftyLit in all of your wonderful ways. And we hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. Be safe and know that we just are so thankful and appreciative for all of you.
Thank you.